thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. We have a very interesting story to talk about tonight. We have in the studio attorney Juan Guerra. He's a very well-known lawyer in Texas. He has an office in Houston and in McAllen. We are working together on one of the transitional committee meetings with Mayor Turner. And he's a very knowledgeable lawyer who won a big federal case this year. We also have in the studio his client. Her name is Joan De Fuente, I might be saying this wrong, Garza.
De Fuente Garza.
Oh, De Fuente Garza, okay? And Joan, let me call her Joan, was a McAllen police officer for 16 years and got charged with a federal case of smuggling illegal aliens or illegal immigrants, or however you want to say it. I think the official title of the charge is unlawful transportation of illegal aliens, and we have Juan to explain that to us. But in our tradition, Joan will tell her story of how she got caught up doing a friend a favor and ended up facing charges, which is a very unfortunate situation for a police officer to get into. So Joan, thank you for having the courage to share your story so that we can educate about the criminal justice system, educate people about what the criminal justice system is all about, what your feelings are about it, and how it happened. And thank you, Juan, for getting your client here to talk about it.
Well, thank you for having us, Vivian.
I know that she's nervous, so we're going to break the tradition a little bit. Usually the person in trouble starts off, but we're going to get Juan to explain it to us first before Joan tells her story.
All right, well, this case, our theory throughout the case was one of friendship, trust, and betrayal. And that was our theme throughout the trial. And the jury agreed with us that Joan's friend for a number of years, 3 years, who she trusted, ultimately betrayed her trust by asking her to take two individuals who he told Joan were his family members. And when Joan got to the checkpoint, not only did she discover that they weren't family members, they were undocumented aliens. And that's where the nightmare begins for Joan.
Oh, wow, Joan. So tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Mission. I was born and raised there. Well, born in Pharr and then raised in Mission. I started off with the law enforcement as a dispatcher 911, supervisor for 10 years. I moved on, I applied for the police academy. I developed love in helping the people, and I was passionate. I wanted to go to patrol instead and do a little bit more for them and be out there instead of just being on the line. And
wow, how was that for you? A lady police officer with kids, was that scary? Or because it's a lot of violence everywhere.
yes, it's well, the kids look up to you a lot, and my children were happy and they're excited that their mother's a police officer, and when you go to their school and visit them, you have the children come up to you and take a picture with you. They want to say hi. So I loved it.
You loved it. And you would go to your children's school in your police uniform?
Yeah, sometimes I had to pick them up, or sometimes I have to have lunch with her at least once a week with my little one, the 9-year-old. Mm-hmm. And she would always have her little friends come and say hi. Sometimes we're in uniform, sometimes we're not. Depends. We have rotating shifts. So from 2011 to up to June 2015, I was a police officer for the McAllen Police Department, patrol officer. And I had gotten, what got me into knowing this individual I ended up getting in trouble with is I was involved in an accident and while I was on patrol, I ended up getting injured, a sustained injury to my neck and to my shoulder. I was referred to him as he was licensed chiropractor in Mexico, as he would give therapy. He would only charge $20, $30 a session. I started attending and going to his home, and we developed a friendship through time. I'll do favors for him. He was a single father, I was a single mother. I would pick up his child for him from school. Sometimes vice versa, he would do it for myself. And the friendship just developed. He knew about my family, that I had a sister in San Antonio, and he eventually, as years progressed, eventually asked me one day if I would take his daughter to Houston because he wouldn't travel in big cities. He wouldn't dare go over there. It was too much for him. And since it was summer, she was going to go stay with some relatives in Houston, and that he would provide for fuel expenses, whatnot. I took my son with him, took his daughter, dropped her out with some relatives. She was going to spend about a month or two over there, and it was perfectly fine. We had dinner, I think, when we came back with him, and he was thankful that we did him the favor and so on. Then a couple of weeks later, he asked me, well, he knew I was going to go to San Antonio. It's going to be my sister's birthday. She lives in San Antonio. We're going to come and celebrate over here. We're going to go to SeaWorld. We had booked to stay, to have dinner, whatnot, and we're here in San Antonio. One of our conversations, he acknowledged that I was going to be in San Antonio this weekend. He said, on your way over there, can you drop off some relatives? They have relatives in San Antonio waiting for them, whatnot. Can you just do me the favor? I'll give you about $100 for gas for going a little bit out of your way or whatnot. So I agreed. Picked up the relatives.
And where'd you have to pick the relatives up from?
At his house in Mission. He also lived in Mission. And they were there. I picked up the relatives, and on our way we were to San Antonio. And that's where the nightmare begins.
Oh my God. So how'd you figure out, how did it start? How did someone say, hey, you're doing something wrong? What happened?
We got to the checkpoint for Julius. I lowered the windows.
Now, why is there a checkpoint one from Mission to San Antonio?
It's considered a port of entry, Vivian. There is a checkpoint from all the South Texas cities. There's a number of checkpoints. There's one in Falfurrias, there's one in Sarita, there's one coming from Laredo, there's one in Hebronsville. So once you cross the U.S.-Mexico border, you get into the South Texas cities. But when you want to travel north to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, you have to go through a checkpoint.
An American checkpoint?
An American
I didn't know
checkpoint,
that.
yeah. They have to go through an American checkpoint where they ask everyone if they're citizens or residents. You have to show your documentation if you're not a U.S. citizen. They also have drug dogs that, that go around the vehicles. They have stops for 18-wheelers, big trailers. They also, depending on the situation, they ask for documentations where they're traveling. They have a bill of lading that they take a look at and make sure everything's in order. If it's not, they'll move into secondary. They have an x-ray machine there.
Wow.
So they're essential, the reason for being there, they're looking for illegal aliens and or drugs. So that is the purpose of those checkpoints, and it's run by Border Patrol.
Now, do they stop everybody or just some people?
They stop everybody to ask them whether or not they're U.S. citizens. So everybody stops. If you're a U.S. citizen, everybody acknowledges that. They'll let you go. If there's some discrepancy or there's an issue, they don't get the proper response, they don't understand the question, or if their documents aren't in order, for example, if you're a legal permanent resident where you have a permit, you show that document, they'll let you go by. And if there's an issue with a dog that alerts to a potential narcotics in the vehicle, then they'll pull you over to secondary to do a secondary inspection. And this is what happened in Joan's case. When they pulled up to the primary inspector, they asked Joan. Joan was traveling with her son was in the front, and her daughter was in the back with these two female occupants. Obviously,
Now, are those females adults or children?
They were adults.
Okay.
They were adults. I think the youngest one was
19
years old. The other one was 22, 23. So when the two females could not respond to the questions in English, they were sent to secondary. And at secondary inspection is when it was determined, they admitted that they were in the country unlawfully or illegally, which is the first time that Joan had heard this and the first time she realized that she'd been betrayed by her friend.
Wow. So, Joan, American people in Houston would say, well, if they didn't speak English, you should have been tipped off to that. So tell me what that I mean, I know a lot of people in that area just speak Spanish. I know that, but I'm just saying, I'm from San Antonio, so I know, but I'm just saying our viewers might not know that. So tell me what you thought about the fact that they were only communicating in Spanish.
They were I would communicate with them in English and Spanish.
Oh, so they understood
Yeah,
English.
they were not very talkative.
Okay.
They were mostly quiet. They really didn't say much. One of them was on their cell phone. The other one was asleep. And me and my son were also on the cell phone. The kids weren't on the electronics. So I wasn't talking to the kids either. But there wasn't much communication between us.
So you didn't know them, so you were just giving them a ride.
Yes, ma'am.
But they knew how to communicate in English.
Yes, ma'am.
The little communication that young people do. One of my girlfriends and I, just to get off the subject, talk about how young people, 19, 20, 21, 22, they live in this in-between world, in between reality and cyberspace. Right. You know, they created this world for themselves, so they're always like blogging or on social media, and it's like another world for them. It's like another layer of reality that we're really don't acknowledge. They're not, almost like they're not real sometimes. Yes. So I can understand that. If you have some strange kids in your car, they're not going to talk to you. All they're going to do is be on their electronics.
Well, going back to that point, one of the elements of this case is knowingly or reckless disregard to some facts that she should have known that they were in the country unlawfully. And one of the things that we were able to point out to the court that they, or to the jury, that they came and stayed at this individual's house. They were there overnight. They'd been walking for a number of hours. However, when they were at the home, they took showers, they cleaned their clothes. So they were very well dressed. When Joan picked them up and put them in the car, there was absolutely nothing for her to look at and say, well, there's something off here. They were well dressed. Their clothes were not torn, like they'd been traveling for or walking for a number of hours. They were well groomed, bathed. They didn't have.
And they had cell phones. I mean, they're just acting like normal young kids.
Exactly. I mean, that was a big factor. One of the things that we really focus on is the fact that one of them had a cell phone and was on her cell phone throughout. It's about 45 minutes from Mission McAllen area to the checkpoint. So she was on her cell phone the entire time. That was one of the things that we focus on during trial, that she had her cell phone. I mean, there was nothing to indicate that these people were not who her friend told them that they were.
Wow. So, and it wouldn't be normal to ask people to show you their ID. I wouldn't if I was giving somebody a ride. So did that ever come up, like on cross-examination? Did you ask for their ID?
No, one of the things, no, it didn't come up, but one of the things that was brought up during cross-examination of Joan when she testified is that the fact that she is a police officer, and when she was initially questioned, they asked her, well, you can tell being a police officer in McAllen, South Texas, when you see illegals. And she said, absolutely. Absolutely, I can tell. In this case, there was nothing to indicate that they were in the country unlawfully or illegally.
Right, because they cleaned up. So they didn't look like somebody you see on patrol just crossing over or just getting here, right? They didn't.
Right.
Well, that was good. What else? So what else happened?
We got pulled into secondary, and at this time, my son is asking them questions, telling them where's their identification, where's their papers, why didn't they say anything, or why don't they answer, because the girls were just staring.
Your son is asking?
Yeah, my son, and my little girl's panicking because the officers approach her vehicle from every door.
Now let me ask you this about kids, because you know most 9-year-olds don't have ID. So when you bring your kids at this checkpoint, what do they expect from kids?
Well, I mean, I can tell you.
Kids don't have ID.
I can tell you a personal story about me and the checkpoint, and this is one of the reasons why I decided that I was going to be a lawyer. A similar situation happened where, well, it wasn't similar, but my uncle, my father, myself, and at the time, my 9-year-old brother, we were pulled into secondary because they suspected we were either in the country illegally or maybe transporting drugs. Well, one of the things that really has stood out to me, it's just engraved in my memory, is my little brother. Everybody had ID, but my little brother, obviously at 8 or 9, didn't have an ID.
Right.
And this officer, and I can remember his face, was screaming at my little brother, "Where's your ID? Where's your ID? Where's your ID?"
Where's your son's ID?
And I said to him, I said, he is 9. He doesn't have an ID. There's his father. I'm his brother. That's his uncle. And it was a feeling of
disrespect.
Well, disrespect,
yeah.
It was a lonely feeling in the sense that I had no idea what our individual rights were,
right,
and what we could do to stop the screaming and yelling and the abuse. And that's one of the moments that I look back and think to myself, that is why I became a lawyer. I never wanted to feel that way where I didn't know what my rights were or people around me, and I wanted to help those who didn't know their individual rights.
Wow, that's a profound statement. Where are you from?
I was born in also a small town in South Texas, Roma, Texas, which is in Starr County. It's about 45 minutes to an hour, I guess, east of McAllen, where Joan is from.
Okay.
I lived there for, till about I was 10, then I moved to Houston. But we would go back every summer. That was my summer camp. That was my summer camp.
Yeah, going back home with the relatives. So you get pulled over to secondary. Now, which one is your son, the 9-year-old?
The 13.
Okay, so that's your son. So he's like, what is your son saying?
Asking them,
Where's your papers?
where's your ID? Why didn't y'all say anything? What's wrong with y'all? Why didn't you say anything to us? He's panicking. At the same time, the agents are approaching our vehicles, asking us to get off the vehicles, yelling, and my little girl's crying hysterical because, she doesn't know what's going on. She can hear them getting questioned. Where's your papers? Where you're from? I think one of the girls finally answered and said in Spanish that she didn't have anything. And that's when we were already out of the vehicle on into the trailer in there. And to get further questioned, they had to step in all together. My daughter crying hysterically, the agents asking her questions, and my son telling the agents that they have to prove intent, because that's the way my son speaks. You have to prove intent. You can't treat us like this or whatnot. The agents are telling him to settle down. At the same time, they're taking off my shoelaces, getting ready to book me to the cell. And then I get put in the cell with my kids.
So they arrest you and your babies?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's just awful.
Yeah.
And what about the other ladies? Did they get put in the same cell or a different one?
They get put in a room close to us or across
Oh,
us.
that's awful. I know that is awful. I hate to say this, but at least you were with your kids. I mean, just think if they'd have separated y'all. Oh, that would have been awful if they'd have separated. At least you were in a cell with your children, but I'm sure that was humiliating. Did you have an opportunity to tell them that I'm a policeman? I mean, I wouldn't do this, or you just were trying to play it cool?
I was cooperating with them, and they asked me.
Because you had a gun, right? Or did you not travel with your gun?
I had my uniform. I was going to come back to work after
Straight
dropping
to
off
work,
my kids in San Antonio. So I had my uniform and a gun and whatnot in the trunk. And I had asked to be given a chance to have a phone call so I can have somebody pick up my kids and so I can call my workplace. So I can let them know that I wasn't going to be able to go to work. And that's when they asked me, where did I work? And I told them where I work. And my first phone call was to have somebody pick up my children, but we had to stay in the holding cell till somebody got there.
Okay.
So we were there for
So who picked up your babies?
my ex-husband.
Okay.
My ex-husband came and picked up the kids.
Okay, well, that's good.
Then I was interrogated in front of the kids and cooperated with them. I gave them my cell phone. I answered their questions, and I told them I didn't know. There was no intent.
Did they record you?
Vivian, in federal court.
I know they don't use recorders anymore.
they're
in the
not-
90s, they used to, but they stopped. I tried cases in federal court in the 90s, but we'd ram those recorders up their asses. So they stopped using them all of a sudden.
Yeah, so
I was just wondering because they still can.
They don't. They don't
They
because
don't, 'cause they know that
federal
you're
law
gonna-
does not require them to record.
And they know
or
that you're going to
videotape.
believe, the jury's going to
Right.
believe the officer. So they don't want to record it so that you can just have their word and they can just ad-lib whatever story they want. It is so unfair.
It is very unfair. Very unfair. So as long as there's two officers there and one can verify the
Right.
other's account of what took place, that's all they need.
That's all they need. Wow. Wow. But your children were there, so did y'all call any of them to testify, the 13-year-old?
No, we didn't call them to testify.
I mean, I know it's always traumatic to have kids testify, but just because he was older and he seems like he knows the law, like there was no intent, I was just wondering if y'all...
No, we never considered having the children testify. My co-counselor, Mr. Armando Marroquin, and I always believed that the case was going to hinge on Joan and her testimony and her account of what took place. We couldn't have won this case without Joan. Joan did a fantastic job telling her story, account by account, minute by minute, and she is like she is now. She was strong. She was very detailed, and she was great. She testified. She did
I'm sure she was
fantastic
very
job.
humble and but sad, because that's a sad, that's a sad situation. So how did the officers treat you though when you were in custody? Were they nice to you? They treat you with respect, or how did they treat you? I mean, you can say. This is just on public access. It's not like it's on major TV. You can say.
They were not very nice to me at all.
Really?
Yes.
So what can you say about what she told you?
Well, what I can say is
How does she feel? I mean, because I understand that our perceptions are what we're talking about, so I'm just saying, how did she?
I think she's never been on this side.
On the other side.
These are what she considers her peers, and I think I believe she was hurt by the way she was treated. But our clients are treated that way every day.
Every day.
Something that stood out during closing arguments. The front row on the government side was full of agents who wanted to, hear closing arguments, and obviously.
Well, they weren't in uniform, because most of them don't wear uniforms, right?
No, there was none of the agents were in uniform. The primary and secondary agents were in uniform at the time, but when they came to testify, no.
They didn't.
Yeah.
That's good, because that always gives them a little more credibility
Right.
when they come in uniform.
Right.
So the ones on the front row, did y'all fill up the court with your relatives or your police officers, or weren't supportive?
My family, my
Family.
sister, my brother-in-law, and my best friend were there. And
Wow.
their side, I think he brought to testify 11 people, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
Who had 11 people?
Government.
The government.
They did. So they had 11 people in the front row or to testify?
They actually stayed all the way till the verdict.
Wow. Now those agents who arrested you, did they sit at the table with the prosecutors?
Oh, well, as you know, only the case agent, the lead case agent, gets to sit at the table.
Was that the person who arrested her though?
No, actually, he never had any contact with Joan. The case agent, he took in all the reports, looked at all the reports, and just handled the case, I guess, administratively until they got to trial. He testified, but the gist of his testimony was to the phone dump that they took from Joan's phone, all the contacts and text messages and everything that was contained in the phone. He didn't have much to say about the underlying case. One of the things that we asked the agent was, because Joan was so cooperative and gave him the information of this individual, where he lived, was there any follow-up investigation?
That's important.
And the answer was no.
No. Right.
We-
We got her, and that's enough.
We are the ones that hired an investigator to go look for this individual, try to get a statement, and get him subpoenaed to come testify in court.
And this is the Cairo.
This is the Cairo.
Did y'all find him?
No.
He disappeared?
He disappeared and moved.
Your friend disappeared? Oh my God.
Disappeared and moved back to what we believe he's in Mexico.
And took his daughter and everything?
There's people already living there that knew him and stated that he was no longer living there.
Yeah.
And he'd been there for 3 years, the 3 years you knew him.
Yes.
So he knew he got her in trouble.
Yes.
That's.
Do you think those people were related to him? Or do you think he was just being a coyote? What do y'all think?
Well, what I believe now, I think he was a coyote. The description of a coyote more is to get you across the border.
But not from the
I
border
think
on.
Right. I think he was being paid to get these, because there's different phases of transporting aliens. You got to get them across the river.
Right.
And then,
Which is the hardest part, right?
which is a hard part. Well, that's
Today,
hard part
with our
number one.
security now, because I know the borders are being heavily policed by the DPS and
Right.
some of those guys.
And the second part is getting them through the checkpoint, which is the second port of entry, if you will.
Gotcha.
And we believe that he was being paid for that process. But obviously, we never got a chance to talk to him.
Wow, I can't believe he disappeared and he was her friend.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think I'll ever see him.
So when you got booked in and arrested at the checkpoint, did the feds come get you? How did you get out of there? Where did you go next?
They had me in there for past midnight.
Had your children been picked up already?
My children got picked up maybe about 2 or 3 hours later, and I was held in there till past midnight. You know, they were questioning me back and forth, whatnot, asking me to access my pictures and my phone records and my messages. And
that should have been helpful because you're not going to have pictures of these people, right?
Right.
The only phone messages are going to be with the Cairo. Is his name Israel or Ismail?
Ruben.
Ruben. Okay, so you got messages with him, but that's going to be normal messages, right? Just with.
Right.
And pictures with him, and they asked for pictures of him, and I gave it to them, and their address and where he lives. And
So you
whatnot.
gave them all that information, so
Yes.
you would think they'd follow up.
You would think.
Wow. Okay. So what else?
I think I got transported onto another checkpoint past, not to another station, past midnight or. Maybe
Now, was
that-
anyone else detained that they had to transport with you, or were you the only one?
I was the
that
only
night?
one detained that night. No, there was other cases going on, but
Oh, there
my
were?
case was. There was other cases going on at the same time mine was going on.
So wow. So how many people were interrogating you before you got moved?
Several people.
Golly.
I think it's something that she should share those stories because, you know, as a police officer, you're not allowed in general population when you get arrested.
Right.
You've got to be segregated.
Right.
So she spent how many days in segregation by yourself?
6 days.
6 days. And I bet that was lonely. In SEG. Now, where were you in SEG? Which facility?
Coastal Bend.
Huh?
Coastal Bend.
Coastal Bill. And so the women are separated, and it's my understanding that the women are not as, you know, gangbangery as the guys are. It's a little bit.
Depends on where you are, Vivian.
Okay, so some of the girls are bad too.
Yeah.
Because I know about the guys being bad.
Yeah. So she was in segregation for a couple days.
6 days.
That's a long time. How did you pass the time being in jail for 6 days?
There's no television, there's no books, there's no radio, just push-ups, sit-ups.
Oh my God. What about the climate in there? Was it cold, hot?
It's cold.
Did they have heat?
Yeah.
They did have heat?
Yeah, but it's mostly cold, so
Mostly cold?
most of the facilities are cold.
Oh my God, that's awful. So you're just sitting there with nothing to do, nothing to read, nothing to do. I mean, that'll make you go crazy. I mean, what did you do? Just push-ups all day? What did you do?
So I can get tired and go to sleep. And
So you
just wait.
worked out and went to sleep, worked out and went to sleep.
Just wait.
I heard it's a miserable existence.
Yes.
Oh my God, for 6 days. And so after the 6 days, what happened? Did you go to a detention hearing or what happened?
I went to a hearing and post-bond. And
Okay. Had you guys been retained at that time, or did you have to have a different lawyer at first?
I asked for,
Public defender?
what do you call them?
Yeah, public defender. Somebody was appointed to her.
A court-appointed lawyer.
Yeah.
Court appointed so you could get out.
So I can get the bond.
Right. And it was a personal recognizance bond, I guess?
There's a people on
Federal PR bond? Because you weren't a flight risk. I mean, they have everything on you. Wow. And so from there, did you have to pay any money to get out?
Yes.
How much?
I don't remember the fine. I don't recall.
It was a 5%, maybe $1,500 to the registry of the court, and she'll get that back whenever
they feel like it?
Right.
Whenever they get to it? I know.
whenever they get to it.
So, wow. Okay, so then you have to start the process of finding a lawyer. So tell me how that process went. Did you get referrals from people? I mean, how did you? I know Juan is a big, bad lawyer and all, but I'm just asking. He's mostly in Houston, so I know his partner is there. So how did you go about selecting a lawyer?
Well, at first, I started getting attacked also by Child Protective Services because of my children, and they were on the newspaper and all over the media.
They put you in the newspaper?
All over the media on Channel 4.
Oh,
Channel
my
5's
God.
Local media down there.
Did they have your picture?
They didn't have a picture. I think they had a picture just where it says smuggling, aliens, and I think one of them, one of my relatives said that they had a picture of my car when they were towing it. And but no pictures of me.
Did they put your name in there?
They put my name in there. My little girl, how she was panicking.
They didn't put your daughter's name though in there, did they?
They put her name. They just put that
Your daughter.
that she told agents that she was so scared, and they basically tarnished me as a mother as well.
That is so awful. I can't believe they treated another police officer like that. I mean, I'm just shocked about that. So after they separated you, let me go back a little bit. How did they get you did they ever try to put you in those illegal ladies with you to see how y'all interacted, or do you know what they were saying? I mean, I know you can't.
There was a point where I could hear what they were saying at the beginning when we got put in line, and they were taking my shoelaces off and my phone and all that, and they were telling them, "Where are you from? How did you get here?" And I can hear what they were telling them, and just tell us the truth. We're gonna help you. Just be honest with us. We're gonna get you through this. Basic.
Lies.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard that before?
Yes, I have.
Basic.
I have.
Basic. And then at one point, then they separated us after they, took our belongings or whatnot. Then they.
So did the girls act scared? Were they crying too? I know y'all were crying, but were they crying too?
They were crying.
Okay. So at least y'all all crying like you're supposed to. I mean, because I'd be scared. I'd be crying. Wow. So did the officers act like they were going to give you any mercy, like let you go because you didn't understand it, or what? They just have a duty to arrest? I mean, what's the process, Juan? They have to?
Well, no, not necessarily. What I know about the case, and I really respect the U.S. Attorney on this case, the initial call when they came in, they didn't accept charges.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it took some time and a little bit more investigation and developing the case before charges were actually accepted. They were accepted after the second phone call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at least they turned it down at first. Is that the same AUSA that took the charges the one that actually prosecuted it all the way?
In this case, it was. In this case, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Was that a male officer or a female? I mean, a agent. I mean, U.S. attorney.
It was a male.
A male. Okay. But I'm glad y'all went to trial pretty quickly. So, I mean, you had like maybe one reset? Because from June to January, 5 months, that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the issue...
I know you have a right to go to trial in Speedy Trial Act. The feds do follow the Speedy Trial Act. So when a person is detained and they go to a detention hearing, like Joan did, at that detention hearing when she got her bond or bail, she was given her trial date then. She was given a scheduling order, and usually it's 75 days from that date.
Yeah, we had one reset due to scheduling conflicts, but aside from that, the two individuals that were arrested for being in the country illegally were being held as material witnesses. So they were going to be held, in this case, until we tried the case or until the case was disposed of. So giving that factor, we all, myself, the U.S. Attorney, and my co-counsel, we all agreed that we needed to try this case as quickly as possible to get Joan's life back and to get the material witnesses back to their home country. They were from El Salvador.
El Salvador, okay. Wow. Now, was the Cairo from El Salvador, Ruben?
No.
So they had come through Mexico maybe to get to here?
Right.
Okay, probably. Wow. So did they testify? The girls testify?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what did they say?
Well, it's kind of interesting, in federal court.
In federal, they'll tell them what to say.
Well, in federal court, this was very interesting. We have a right to material witness. We depose the material witnesses before trial. Now we can elect either to just depose them and show the video to the jury. But in this case, it was a little interesting. The judge agreed with us that they should testify live because one of the material witnesses in the middle of the deposition, she wasn't very forthcoming. She wasn't given any detail. So there was a reset. Because they're appointed attorneys, material witnesses are. Her attorney took her outside, spoke to her for 20, 30 minutes, came back inside, and then she started remembering much, much more detail. So based on that, the judge agreed with us that the jury should see them live instead of just a video to make sure that a jury would be able to see their demeanor on the stand, not just on the video. And to go back to your question, their testimony in trial was different than it was at the deposition.
Really?
It was a little different for whatever reason.
Was it more damning when they testified live?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Joan was. I remember Joan telling me that she was very upset about that because when we left the depositions, we felt good. We felt good.
Because they had verified they didn't know her before,
Right.
that they were catching a ride. I mean, how did they characterize her in the depositions?
Well, just as a young lady who picked them up and was taking them to San Antonio, very little discussion.
Did they know her cell number? Did they admit that they didn't know her cell number?
They admit that they didn't know.
They didn't pay
in the
her any
depositions,
money?
admit that they didn't know their cell number. Admit that there was very little conversation, and more importantly, to us, both of them admitted that they were never asked by Joan if they were in the country illegally, and they never told Joan that they were in the country illegally. They testified a little different. Not as to that aspect. We were still able to get them to admit that Joan never asked them. They never told Joan that they were in the country illegally. But some of the testimony in trial was that they had more conversation in the vehicle. Specifically, where are you from? El Salvador, which is something that didn't come up in the deposition. And that was, that in the middle of trial, that's hurtful. But we were able to show that this was the first time that
We'd ever had that.
anybody in the courtroom have ever heard that. So.
And that they had testified something differently under oath at the deposition. So you had a copy of the deposition.
Absolutely.
So this was an expensive trial for you. To have to pay for depositions and pay for the records. Wow. Wow. So how do you think the jury, just by, I don't know if you're one of those people that watches a jury, but if you did watch them, how did you think they reacted to the girl's testimony?
You know, this was, I usually pride myself on being able to read the jury, even though sometimes I'm wrong. But they were very professional. They're very professional. I don't know if you, in corpus, the makeup of the jury pool is interesting because you have farmers, you have people that live as far away as 45 minutes an hour, Kingsville, different little towns around there. So you have a good makeup of people. They were very professional and paid attention to every detail. So it was a great jury. I could not, none of us could read what was going on.
Right. That's the best juries too.
Right.
You cannot read
Right,
their
cannot read
facial
what was going on.
expressions.
Right.
They just do their job and listen.
That's it. Yeah, they were great.
Wow. Wow. I know you were scared to death, weren't you, Joan?
Very
of what was
stressful.
going to happen. Oh, my goodness. How many of your family members stayed and watched the trial to give you support?
About 3.
About 3?
Three.
Because you need some family members in there to give you support when you're going through that. Because the government always has so many people on their side.
That's right.
And so
And one best friend.
and what's
one best friend coworker, yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. But that person didn't have a uniform or anything on?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
She didn't.
They probably wouldn't have wanted them to anyway. So how did you find, I know it's hard to talk about judges, but how did you find, did you feel the trial was fair?
Absolutely. Judge Rainey is a very, very fair judge, very professional, very courteous, very thoughtful. He was, I wish I could have every trial in front of Judge Rainey. He was wonderful. He was a great judge.
I've had a great experience like that in Austin in federal court with Judge Yackel. He was just like the best. Smart, fair, fair to both sides, listens to both sides, was not biased. He was just swayed by the evidence and the arguments and the law.
Yeah, that's
Just what you think a federal judge should be. I don't experience that as much here as I'd like to in Houston, where I practice every day. But we do have some great judges. I'm not saying we don't. But, it's just that you don't run into that all the time.
Right.
Because some judges go beyond the call of duty. I was actually at a national criminal law seminar in Aspen.
It's a great seminar, by the way.
I've never been. That was my
great
first time. I've
seminar.
been wanting to go for 20 years. I finally got the money and time and made sure I didn't have. Cause, in January we usually have so many trials set because we're trying to chill in December, and I made sure I had it like 6 months out on my calendar so I wouldn't put anything there. I'm still planning for the trip, of course, but it was fun. But they had a federal judge speak. Have you seen him speak?
Which
That
one
federal
was
judge?
it? Every
I forgot
time-
his name, but he's out of North Dakota, if I'm not mistaken, or Montana, somewhere. But let me tell you this. Imagine this. I have never heard of this. It was wonderful, though. He reads the law. He speaks at criminal defense lawyer, and I'm sure prosecutor, everybody's seminars. He visits the guys he sends to prison. He knows them. He writes them. He encourages
Wow.
them. He does it every year. He's been doing it forever. He encourages other federal judges to do it. He said he's taken one person, a lady judge, I think, and she said she'd never do it again. But he actually encourages them to get more education. He has a relationship with them
Wow.
forever.
That's interesting. I never heard that.
Oh my God. And so he was telling us what impresses him in pre-sentence reports and sentencing memorandums, and what kind of letters he likes. You know, he hates the boilerplate character letter. So he told us, you know, gave us pointers on what impresses him when you write him. So yeah, I'll have to share those notes with you if you ever have to write a letter, because I need to pull it out for one I need to do right now. But okay, have you ever heard of that
Absolutely
before?
not.
And he's a
That's
friend of NACDL because he'd spoken before. They all were looking forward to him. They told me, you know, other members were like, make sure you don't miss him. You don't, because I've never heard anything like that before. A federal judge that has a job for life, that's putting people in prison and going to visit them.
That's great.
Is that amazing or what?
Yes. And that's
That'll
a lot
change
of
your
people.
perspective.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. He's more interested in the crack and cocaine generation. You know, just because he's an elderly white gentleman, but I just think he wanted to try to reach those guys. You know, I just think he was trying to reach them because the white collar guys usually have a lot of support anyway.
Right.
So, but the crack cocaine generation, and drug generation, they're usually people who are kind of, you know, at the bottom of society, throws. Parents maybe can't go visit them because in federal court, you know, you could be in prisons out of state, you know, far away from your family.
Right.
So
It's true.
it was very, very impressive. So, I mean, were you confident? Were you scared when you went into trial? What were you thinking?
In trial, I was confident for my behalf because I cooperated, but scared at the same time because
Because they would never dismiss it. Yeah, you still had to go to trial.
You still had to go to trial, and everything was going to be up to the judge, the jury, and whatever they would.
Whatever, yeah. So as a lawyer, you know, that's a lot of pressure when your client is innocent and you have to. So one, I'm a little older than you are, so I've been going through this a lot longer. And that's a lot of pressure.
It was a lot of pressure because we knew the truth, and throughout this process, we got to know Joan and realized that she, you know, is an incredible mother, was a great officer, and still can be and still will be, hopefully. So that's an added pressure. But, you know, at the end of the day, we thought the truth would prevail. We thought when Joan told her story, we would be okay.
Right. So, Joan, would you want to be a police officer again?
Absolutely.
And what did you learn when the police officers handled you when you were arrested? What did you see them do that you'll make sure you never do?
I will not put things that the person didn't say.
But there's pressure as a police officer to make arrests and to write reports that are foolproof. I've had officers here tell me that the probable cause was a drop-down menu of the exceptions to the warrant requirement. I've had officers who are my friends tell me things like that. I would never say their names, but I have had officers tell me, like you always see in Houston, you're going to see, well, he voluntarily talked to me. And then the prosecutor's going to argue, well, he was not in custody. But the officer's saying, I detained him and I went in his pocket. So do you really think that he was? I've had an argument with a DA today about that. I mean, if someone thinks that you're a robbery suspect, they're going to detain you and handcuff you and question you. That's not lawful. They took the dude to the robbery scene for him to be identified. He was not identified, but they still arrest him for what's in his pocket. They went through his pockets when he was handcuffed, and they treated him like a felony suspect. And he was in his Pizza Hut uniform, had just gotten off work. He was at the address. The address is on Imperial Valley. He's at a store across the street from his apartments. And they're looking for someone about 3 blocks down. But he's totally cooperating. He has like his Pizza Hut uniform on. But now they're more casual than they used to be. So it's a black T-shirt that just has pizza. It's like a shape of a pizza. And he had his little hat on. And he's just going across the street to get us some cigarettes and a beer. And I mean, I bring him his check stub to show he got paid the next day from Pizza Hut, direct deposit. Everything. And they're saying, but he still allowed them to go in his pocket.
Yeah, my first felony case was a murder where there was a confession. Taken out in handcuffs, no shoes, no shirt. And the judge, may rest in peace, found that was a voluntary, non-custodial statement.
Oh my God. So, I mean, that's the thing that's just scary is that whatever the police officers say, the DAs and the judge, and generally the jury is going to go with it. So the power of a police officer is so great that I would hope that, you know, if someone goes through the process and that you don't violate their rights. You know, it's enough arrests to make of real criminals and to do it properly.
Yes.
I mean, Mirandize people.
Yes.
You know, Mirandize people. Most people still want to try to talk their way out of something, but still follow the law and do it the right way.
Yes, I agree with you.
Did they Mirandize you?
They Mirandized me eventually. They did.
Eventually, but you were cooperating because you didn't have anything to hide.
Yes, I was cooperating even before the Mirandizing.
So tell me how you played up the friendship, trust, and betrayal theme.
Well, it was.
And did you make an opening statement?
Yes, my co-counsel, Mr. Armando Maraquin, made an opening statement.
Okay.
It was that's how we broke the trial up. We started with the friendship, how the trust developed, and then how we got to us
Betrayal.
being in front of 12 strangers telling our story. And I really believe that the jury agreed with us. They completely agreed that there was a friendship, there was great trust, and it was betrayed.
Did you follow Rule 29?
Absolutely.
And I guess that didn't work.
That didn't work. We asked for Rule 29 after the government rested, and then after we put on our case in chief.
Okay, well, you didn't need it after the verdict, so your verdict was for you.
Right.
So Rule 29 in federal court is like a directed verdict in state court. So you're asking the judge to acquit. In federal court, the judge can take the decision-making away from the jury and find the person not guilty. And so in federal court, as a practitioner, we have to file this, it's in the federal code, it's Rule 29. And so we have to file a Rule 29 motion for acquittal, and the judge can say, okay, and my first trial, I had one granted in a big drug case where he was facing automatic life.
Really?
And I had a federal judge grant it.
That's a great
Oh my God, I was trying it with a lot of great lawyers, Robert Jones, Randy Schaefer, Mr. Walter Pink, who's now deceased. And Robert Jones said, well, you know, if you were a man, you'd take that tie off and have it framed because that's your good luck tie. That judge has changed a lot since those days. She doesn't grant those anymore, but she was newly appointed by Clinton. She was very idealistic. And so that was a good time. That guy went on to do great things. He had to go to state jail because the feds were so mad they went and walked it over to Harris County and filed on him, where he was a habitual. And I think, you know, but it was no guns involved, so he might have served 5 years. And they harassed him so much. He said he kept writing the federal judge who would basically told them to leave him alone. And he's done real well now. He's still out today. He got him a kind of company, lawn care, like landscaping business. Got a big dually, and he does it himself. He has big commercial contracts, and that's what he does all day long.
It's a great story.
And he comes to my office still. Actually, it was a part of like the Rap-A-Lot guys back in the 90s.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. He got caught up in something with them in the 90s. But anyway, it was a great story because his part of the trial he was on video doing his part. That's when they were still using recorders, and it was one of those kind. But the part that he did, like picking up the money, his was on video. But he had a great defense, and the judge went for it. Yep. The Master P group versus Rap-A-Lot group, and he thought he was stealing DATs, digital, some kind of record. It's those little things that they record over, and it's not a federal crime to steal music.
Oh, interesting.
Because you couldn't see, he never saw what was in it. But you saw him going and getting the cooler, leaving the money, but he didn't know what was in it. And it was some rap groups from New Orleans versus Houston, so it was all around that activity. And it was a set-up crime, and we think the judge didn't like the setup because it was the federal setting them up. Everything was set up. The drugs were fake. They came out of their closet. The money came out of their closet, so it wasn't a real crime. They were trying to set them up. So it was interesting. But it is scary. So that's why I wanted to know. But so the jury, how did you feel about the jury? Did they ever like wink at you or look at you with sympathy? Did they cry when you cried? Or were you too scared to even look at them?
They're very professional. I didn't know what was going to happen, really. I didn't.
What was the jury makeup? Was it mostly men, mostly women? Do you remember one?
Yeah, it was, we had 8 women, and we had 4 men, and the alternate was a male as well.
Was that your goal, to have more women since you were
You know, we went back and forth on that. I'm going to tell you, but don't let me forget about the
No, tell me now. We have 7 minutes, so come on.
The foreman of the jury, okay, he was a gentleman that I got to talk to a little bit. He was a victim of both a stabbing and a shooting.
Wow.
He
At
was
different times?
stabbed and shot at different times.
Oh, wow.
And he was our foreman.
Oh, wow.
Completely threw all of us off. We
wow.
had no idea that he would be the foreman. But 8 women, 4 men, and then the alternate was a male.
Wow. So how did this guy, was he a business owner that kept getting vandalized? Or what happened?
You know, we didn't get too far into it. I got into it a little bit because, you know, he was a victim of a violent crime, which really didn't matter to us in this
Right.
case because there was
No
no violence. But yeah, he just came out and said, you know, I was stabbed, and then a couple of years later, I was shot. One of those, and I don't remember if it was a shooting or the stabbing, that crime was never solved. Never found out who did it. I believe it was a shooting. But it was really interesting to us that he was our foreman. Really interesting.
Wow. Wow. That is very interesting because you don't know what he's thinking.
Right.
Wow. So how were the prosecutors when they cross-examined you? I mean, was the prosecutor aggressive with you, like you know you're lying, or was he polite?
I think they're trained to be aggressive, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, but different people develop different styles, but most prosecutors are pretty aggressive. And some of them try cases matter-of-factly, though.
Right.
So it just depends on, you know, the person.
Yes.
So you felt like he was being a little aggressive with you?
Yeah, little.
What, like, you know, you knew, or how were they trying to create the fact that you knew their status?
He kept on emphasizing on my child, on my little girl, the fact that my little girl said, my mommy's going to get arrested because they don't have papers. And
Did your baby say that?
my baby said that, and they put it in the newspapers. She said it to an agent, but the baby was right with them, right with us when we were getting questioned and whatnot.
But the only thing she was saying is that they couldn't produce them right then, right? That's all she was saying.
She was regurgitating what the officers were saying.
Gotcha.
That's what she did.
And she was just scared.
She was just scared.
She's 9. Yeah.
Yeah. My mom was going, yeah, you're just paranoid. Yeah. So the jury understood that.
Right.
Most people have kids, so they know kids just parrot what they hear.
And he would go back and kept emphasizing on my little girl and my little girl.
She wasn't a witness. That's all. Oh, that's playing. The jury might not have liked that because that's playing below the belt.
Yeah.
And that's, so why was that hearsay admitted? I'm sorry.
Excited utterance is what the government argued. Excited utterance, present sense impression is what they argued.
Of a child, though? I mean,
you know, technically it met the definition.
it does technically.
Technically it met the definition, so I think the judge followed the book over our objection. But it was, you know, we were able to explain it, you know, through the other agents. They were, the agents were asking these individuals those specific questions, and they couldn't produce the papers. So that's what
And the baby saw that?
Yeah.
'Cause that's the
Yes.
part that was in front of everybody.
Right.
And they never mentioned the 13-year-old, what the 13-year-old's saying. And they don't put him in the newspaper, and they don't question him.
Oh, okay. And he kept saying,
I don't want to get rid of my son because he kept telling them, we have a phone call. We need to.
there's no intent.
We need a lawyer. There's no intent.
It's a very smart
Oh, he's a
child,
very smart
child.
kid.
So they don't talk about that or the U.S. attorney doesn't bring that up.
And you know that's what our clients always tell us too. When
One of the
police officers do.
agents brought it up. One of the agents brought it up while he was on the stand, but then they told him that he was out of line, I think, when he was talking about my son.
Right.
And then they put him back. And
So he was basically trying to be a little helpful, I guess.
What was that?
The agent that talked about her son. He wasn't. That's not the way he was doing it. Okay. All right. Wow. So we have 4 minutes. An hour goes by fast.
Yes.
So what is it? What do you want to say about that experience? And then Juan, of course, I'm gonna close out with you. What do you want to say about this experience?
It's a nightmare I'm still trying to cope with and put it past us, past my, you know,
Your family.
what my children, my family, my children went through. And not everybody is who you believe they are. And when you're at your hardest times, you also have other people stepping on you harder.
Oh no. Yeah, people are cruel.
Yes.
And so sometimes the people you think are your friends are not.
No.
And you find that out. But isn't the Constitution a beautiful document? Because when you're in trouble, you understand it more.
Yes.
Don't you agree? You have the right to compel witnesses to testify on your behalf. You have the right to subpoena people. You have the right to remain silent, or you have the right to give evidence. You have a right to a lawyer. I mean, it was like, the founding fathers really understood that, and we as lawyers have to keep teeth in that document, because otherwise the only people who have rights are the Second Amendment and the First Amendment of freedom of press and freedom of speech, right? Because sometimes I wonder how the press gets to put so much stuff about people in, you know, because some of that's private. Booking photos are not on public record, really. So we have 2 minutes now on. So tell me about how you want to wrap up this experience, and even if you go longer than 2, we'll just keep talking. But tell me how you found this experience.
Well,
and what people should learn about it.
My experience was rewarding because
you won.
Well, not only that, but she gets her life back, and again throughout this process, I've got to know Joan, and I stand by what I say. She was an excellent officer, can be an excellent officer. She's an excellent mother. Went through a divorce and taking care of 2 small children or young children on her own, and yes, there was added pressure, but. I completely agree with the jury's verdict. They got it right, and I'm happy for Joan. I really am.
And let me tell you how I had a client like you one time in a sexual assault case. He went through 2 or 3 lawyers. I was his third. His 2 lawyers tried to make him plead. He installed fiber optics for AT&T. And after we won, it was a hard fight in Guerra's court. It was a hard fight. They wouldn't hire him back, because he couldn't work while it was going on, because you can't, if you got a sexual assault of a child, you can't go into businesses and install fiber optics for AT&T. So, but he had a union, and they held his job allegedly for him. After we won, they still wouldn't give him his job back, because apparently they're thinking some slick lawyer just beat the system and he probably really raped her. And he was a very proud black man from a proud family, and proud people don't want to tell their business or their stories. But it was such a contentious trial that the media knew about the trial, because we were fighting like dogs. And I had to get HCCLA people to come up a few times, because just to watch how I thought the judge was ruling incorrectly, and how I thought the prosecutors were cheating. And the Houston Press wanted to write an article. And I said, Brian, I think you should let them write the article. A lot of people wanted to write. I said, the Houston Press does long articles. So if they write a long article, and it was probably like 4 pages, and you know how long their articles are, from detail to detail, the whole history. Do you know that I went on vacation for a week and came back, and he hadn't gotten his job for 3 months. We did that article. It was published. He said, Ms. King, you're not going to believe this. They gave me my job back. When they read that article, his union reps cried and called him back, and he's been working there ever since. I think the article, it was in 2009 or maybe 2010. I forgot when it was, but he got his job back. His mother and family campaigned for me when I ran and lost. We were like forever friends, because he told his story, and they were able to read it step by step by step, because it was a niece. He'd taken her in. The sister had gone into a drug program, and they split the kids up. It was just a long, long story. But the Houston Press gives you the opportunity to write a long story. And when they read that story, they realized he was really innocent, and they gave him his job back. He's been working there ever since, double time.
Great.
But while he was off, because the state court, and it took about 3 years to get to trial, he had to take classes, he had to do handyman work, he had to hustle because he had kids too. So you might try to figure out some way to tell her story in a long way in that community. Like if there's a magazine or some type of somewhere she can do it, you might want to try to do that. But anyway, thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Thank you, Juan, for telling this story. Thank you, Joan, for having the courage to tell your story. I pray that you get your job back. I think you will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate